The security guard looked me up and down like I was carrying stolen goods instead of a mop bucket. "You're the new cleaning lady?" His tone suggested I might also be there to case the joint. "Actually, I prefer domestic maintenance specialist," I said deadpan. "But yes, I'm here to make sure your billionaire boss doesn't live in his own filth." "Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button." 3 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing in the marble-floored lobby of Morrison Manor at 6 in the morning, armed with industrial-strength bleach and a wounded pride, I would have laughed. Back then, I was Margaret Thompson, co-owner of Thompson's hardware store, married to Tom for 32 years, living a perfectly ordinary life in suburban Cleveland. Now here I was, 54 years old, widowed, and desperate enough to scrub toilets for a 28-year-old who probably made more in a day than I'd seen in my entire lifetime. Tom's sudden heart attack had been devastating enough. Discovering that our store was drowning in debt he'd hidden from me for 2 years, that was the knockout punch. The bank took everything except my dignity, and honestly, some days that felt negotiable. "Mrs. Thompson?" A crisp voice interrupted my mental inventory of life's failures. A woman in her 40s approached, her blonde hair pulled into a bun so tight it probably gave her headaches. Her navy suit screamed expensive, and her smile screamed fake. "I'm Diana Morrison, Mr. Morrison's stepmother. I'll be showing you around today." Stepmother. She looked barely older than the billionaire himself. I'd seen this movie before. Young woman marries wealthy older man, gets widowed, inherits everything. Classic. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mrs. Morrison," I said, mustering what was left of my manners. "It's Miss Morrison now," she corrected, her smile tightening. "My husband passed away 6 months ago." "Ah." So we were both members of the Unwanted Widows Club, though something told me her membership came with significantly better benefits than mine. She led me through rooms that belonged in magazines, Persian rugs that cost more than my old house, crystal chandeliers that would take me a week to clean properly, artwork that made me afraid to breathe too close. "Daniel inherited everything when his grandfather passed," Diana explained as we walked. "The house, the companies, the fortune. He's very particular about his privacy and his space being maintained to exact standards. Translation: don't touch anything expensive. And if you break it, we'll garnish your wages until you're 90. The previous cleaning service was, let go, she continued. They weren't suitable for our needs. They probably asked for a living wage. We climbed a curved staircase that belonged in a Hollywood movie. At the top, Diana gestured toward a long hallway lined with doors. "The master suite is off limits unless specifically requested. The guest rooms need attention twice weekly, and there's a small apartment above the garage where you'll be staying during your scheduled shifts. I'll be living here Tuesday through Saturday. Daniel prefers live-in staff. He works unusual hours and values having people available when needed." Great. 5 days a week in paradise, 2 days remembering what my actual life looked like. We reached the end of the hallway where Diana opened a door marked Private. "This is the family portrait gallery. It needs dusting weekly, but be extremely careful. These paintings are irreplaceable." I nodded, trying to look like someone who had never accidentally knocked over a display of paint cans in her own store. "I'll leave you to familiarize yourself with the layout," Diana said. "Your uniform and supplies are in the utility room downstairs. First shift starts tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp." After she left, I stood alone in the portrait gallery, surrounded by oils paintings of people who had probably never worried about mortgage payments or medical bills. Stern-faced men in suits, elegant women dripping in jewels, children who looked like they'd been born wearing trust funds. I was dusting the frame of a particularly imposing patriarch when I saw it. The portrait stopped me cold. A young woman with dark hair and bright green eyes, wearing a blue dress that looked like it cost more than my car. She was beautiful, sophisticated, clearly painted by an expensive artist. But it was her face that made my hands shake and nearly drop the cleaning cloth. I was staring at my sister Sarah. Sarah, who had disappeared when she was 8 years old and I was 12. Sarah, who had vanished from our backyard during a game of hide-and-seek 42 years ago. Sarah, who had been declared dead after 7 years of searching, turned up nothing. Sarah, who was apparently alive and connected to this family somehow. The nameplate at the bottom of the frame read, "Sarah Morrison, beloved wife and mother. What the hell? Slipped out before I could stop it. I stood there staring at the portrait, my mind racing through impossible explanations. Maybe Sarah just looked like this woman. Maybe it was some cosmic coincidence. Maybe I was having a breakdown and seeing things that weren't there. But no, I knew every freckle on Sarah's face, every expression she made when she was thinking hard about something. This was my little sister, grown up and gorgeous and wearing jewelry that could feed a small country. Is there a problem? I spun around to find a man standing in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of bone structure that suggested excellent genetics and personal trainers. This had to be Daniel Morrison, the boy billionaire himself. My voice came out as a croak. I cleared my throat and tried again. I was just cleaning the portraits, sir. You're staring at that particular painting like you've seen a ghost. You have no idea. She's very beautiful, I managed. Your wife? My mother. Mother. The word hit me like a physical blow. This man, this stranger who probably bought companies the way normal people bought coffee, was Sarah's son, my nephew. I'm sorry for your loss, I said automatically. His expression darkened. She's not dead. Now I was really confused. But Diana says a lot of things. His tone suggested he and his stepmother weren't exchanging Christmas cards. My mother disappeared 8 years ago. No note, no explanation. She just vanished. 8 years ago. That would make this the second time Sarah had disappeared from someone's life. That must have been devastating, I said carefully. Daniel studied me with eyes that reminded me unnervingly of Sarah's. You look familiar. Have we met before? My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't think so, sir. I would have remembered. Daniel? And yes, you would have. He stepped closer to the portrait. My mother had a sister once, before she met my father. She used to tell me stories about her when I was little. What kind of stories? About growing up poor in Cleveland. About a sister who protected her, who taught her to be brave when their parents fought. His voice softened slightly. She said her sister was the only person who ever made her feel safe. Tears stung my eyes. I had tried so hard to protect Sarah. The night before she disappeared, I'd promised her I'd always keep her safe. I'd failed spectacularly. What was her sister's name? I whispered. Margaret. But everyone called her Maggie. The room tilted sideways. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, my sister had told her son about me. Sir, I need to ask you something, and I know it's going to sound insane. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Try me. I took a deep breath and pointed at the portrait. Why does your mother look exactly like my sister who disappeared 42 years ago? For a moment, Daniel just stared at me. Then he looked at the portrait, then back at me, and I watched his face go pale. What's your full name? He asked quietly. Margaret Thompson, but everyone calls me Maggie. Daniel sank into a nearby chair like his legs had given out. Oh my God. I said, my voice shaking. We need to have a very long conversation. 20 minutes later, we sat in Daniel's study while I tried to process what he'd told me. Sarah hadn't died. She'd been taken. My father found her wandering alone near Pittsburgh when she was 8, Daniel explained. She was scared, dirty, couldn't remember anything about her family. He brought her home and my grandmother took her in. Couldn't remember. Or wouldn't say? The question came out sharper than I'd intended. Daniel paused. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I always carried. Sarah and me at a carnival the month before she disappeared. We were sharing cotton candy, both grinning at the camera. Sarah was missing her 2 front teeth. This is my sister, Sarah Thompson. She disappeared from our backyard in Cleveland on July 15th, 1983. She was 8 years old. Daniel stared at the photo for a long time. The resemblance is identical, because it's the same person. I studied his face. Your father didn't find a lost child. Daniel, he took my sister. That's impossible. My father was a good man. He wouldn't what? Wouldn't steal a child and raise her as his own? I kept my voice gentle but firm. Look at the dates. Look at the photo. Look at your mother's face. Daniel was quiet for several minutes, processing. She used to have nightmares when I was growing up. She'd wake up screaming about someone named Maggie. Dad always said they were just anxiety dreams. My heart broke all over again. She was looking for me. The memories started coming back about 10 years ago. She began asking questions about her childhood. about where she came from. Dad got defensive, said the past didn't matter, that we were her real family now. What happened 8 years ago? When she disappeared, Daniel's jaw tightened. She hired a private investigator to look into her past. Found out her real last name might have been Thompson. Dad was furious, said she was being ungrateful, that it would destroy our family if she kept digging. And then she vanished. 3 days later, his voice was barely audible. I always wondered if Dad had something to do with it, but I could never prove anything. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Your father took her once before when she got too close to remembering. What makes you think he wouldn't do it again? Because he's dead. Daniel looked up at me. He died 6 months ago. Natural causes. But Diana's still here. Something flickered in his eyes. Diana hated my mother. Always saw her as competition for Dad's affection. When Mom disappeared, Diana was the one who convinced everyone to stop looking. Said Mom had probably run off with another man. You didn't believe that. Mom loved Dad despite everything. She would never have just left without telling me goodbye. He stood up abruptly. There's something I need to show you. He led me to a wall safe hidden behind another painting. Inside were documents, photographs, and what looked like a private investigator's report. Mom left these for me before she disappeared. I think she knew something was going to happen. I picked up the top photograph. It was me at 17, graduating high school. My parents on either side, smiling proudly. There was an arrow drawn in red ink pointing to my face, and written beneath it in Sarah's handwriting, "My sister Maggie. I need to find her." She never stopped looking for you, Daniel said softly. I looked through the other photos, pictures of our old neighborhood, our parents' graves, even a recent photo of me standing outside Thompson's hardware store. My sister had found me years ago, but something had prevented her from making contact. The private investigator's report, I said, picking up the thick folder. What did he find? Enough to get him killed. I looked up sharply. What? Car accident. 3 days after Mom disappeared. The police said it was suspicious, but couldn't prove anything. A chill ran down my spine. Who else knew about this investigation? Just Mom, the investigator, and Diana. We looked at each other as the implications sank in. If Sarah had discovered the truth about her kidnapping, and if Diana had known about it, then Sarah's disappearance might not have been voluntary at all. Daniel, I said quietly, I think your mother might be in serious danger. The next morning, I was elbow-deep in bathroom tiles that probably cost more than most people's cars when Diana appeared in the doorway like a perfectly coiffed storm cloud. Mrs. Thompson, I need to speak with you. Her tone suggested I was about to be fired, arrested, or possibly both. I straightened up, still holding my scrub brush like a weapon. Of course, Miss Morrison. I understand you've been asking questions about family matters. News traveled fast in the Billionaire mansion. Daniel was showing me the portrait gallery. I was curious about the paintings. Curiosity is dangerous in this house. Diana stepped into the bathroom, effectively trapping me between her and the marble wall. The Morrison family values privacy above all else. I'm just here to clean, ma'am. Are you? Her smile was arctic. Because I've done some checking on you, Margaret Thompson. Hardware store owner from Cleveland. Recently widowed, recently bankrupted. Recently desperate. Each word felt like a slap. I don't understand what you're getting at. I think you do. You're here under false pretenses, aren't you? This isn't about needing work. This is about Sarah. My blood turned to ice. I don't know what you mean. Drop the act. You're her sister. Diana's mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Did you really think you could waltz in here and start asking questions without me noticing? I set down the scrub brush and faced her squarely. And what if I am? Then you need to understand something very clearly. Diana moved closer, lowering her voice. Sarah is gone. She's not coming back. And if you're smart, you'll stop digging into things that don't concern you. Where is she? Diana laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dead for all I care. She was nothing but trouble from the day James brought her home. Always asking questions, always wanting more than she deserved. James took her. He kidnapped an 8-year-old child. James saved her from a life of poverty and neglect. He gave her everything: education, opportunities, luxury. And how did she repay him? By hiring investigators, by trying to destroy his reputation, by trying to find her real family. Her real family was here. We were all she needed. Diana's composure cracked slightly. But it was never enough for precious Sarah. She always wanted more, always thought she deserved better. She deserved the truth. The truth? Diana's voice rose. The truth is that Sarah was ungrateful and selfish. James loved her like his own daughter, and she threw it back in his face. By wanting to know where she came from? By threatening to go public with her delusional theories about being kidnapped. Do you have any idea what that would have done to James's reputation? To his business? So that was it. Sarah hadn't just disappeared. She'd been silenced to protect the Morrison family name. Where is she, Diana? I told you, dead. But you don't know for sure, do you? I watched her face carefully. Because if you knew for certain, you wouldn't be so worried about me being here. Diana's eyes narrowed dangerously. You're playing a very dangerous game, Mrs. Thompson. And you're threatening me. I'm giving you friendly advice. Sarah learned the hard way what happens to people who ask too many questions. The bathroom door suddenly swung open. Daniel stood there, his face dark with anger. Diana, what are you doing? Just welcoming our new employee, Diana said smoothly, her mask sliding back into place, making sure she understands how things work here. I heard voices, raised voices. Mrs. Thompson was asking about the family history. I was explaining our preference for privacy. Daniel looked between us, clearly not buying Diana's explanation. Mrs. Thompson, are you all right? Fine, sir. Just learning the ropes. Diana, I need to speak with you, now. After they left, I sank down on the marble floor, my hands shaking. Diana knew exactly what had happened to Sarah, and she'd all but admitted that the Morrison family was willing to kill to keep their secrets buried. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Detective Martinez, a friend of Tom's who'd helped us when the store was vandalized last year. Rosa? It's Maggie Thompson. I need help, and I think someone's life might be in danger. Detective Martinez arrived at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the Morrison mansion, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Maggie, when you said you needed help, I thought you meant with insurance paperwork or something normal. Rosa slid into the booth across from me. You're talking about kidnapping, murder, and conspiracy. This is way beyond a friendly favor. Rosa, please, I know how it sounds. It sounds like grief and financial stress have made you paranoid. Her voice was gentle but firm. You've been through a lot recently. Maybe you're seeing patterns that aren't there. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Daniel had shared with me. Look at these dates. Look at the progression. Rosa studied the images, the missing child report from 1983, the private investigator's notes, the photos Sarah had collected of our family. Her expression slowly changed from skeptical to concerned. This is compelling circumstantial evidence, she admitted. But it's not proof of current wrongdoing. The private investigator died 3 days after Sarah disappeared. Car accident. Accidents happen. Rosa, please. I'm not asking you to arrest anyone. I just need you to help me figure out what happened to my sister. She was quiet for a long moment. Officially, I can't investigate a missing person case from another jurisdiction without cause. Unofficially, she sighed. I can make some phone calls. Check if there are any open investigations into James Morrison's death. See if anyone else has reported Sarah missing. Thank you. But Maggie, you need to be careful. If you're right about any of this, you're putting yourself in real danger by staying in that house. I can't leave. Not when I'm this close to finding out what happened to her. Then at least promise me you'll check in every day. If I don't hear from you, I'm calling in backup. That evening, I was organizing supplies in the utility room when I heard voices from the kitchen above me. The house's old heating vents carried sound perfectly, and what I heard made my blood run cold. She knows too much. Diana's voice was sharp with frustration. We don't know that for certain. An older male voice I didn't recognize. She's asking about Sarah, about the investigation. She's Sarah's sister, for God's sake. Of course she knows. Then we handle it the same way we handled the other problems. My hands stopped moving. Other problems, like the private investigator who died in a car accident. It's too risky, Diana continued. Daniel suspects something. If another person connected to this dies, he'll start asking questions we can't answer. Then what do you suggest? We move Sarah. Tonight. Somewhere she can never be found. My sister was alive. Diana had been lying when she said Sarah was dead. But for how long? The facility in Canada is secure, the male voice said. Once she's there, it won't matter what anyone suspects. Facility. They were talking about some kind of institution. And if she talks, if she tells someone the truth, she's been heavily medicated for years. No one believes the ravings of a mental patient. Mental patient. They'd had my sister committed to keep her quiet. Fine. Make the arrangements. Diana's voice was moving away. But if this goes wrong, if Daniel finds out what really happened, Daniel will never find out. Neither will the sister. Some secrets are worth protecting at any cost. I waited until the voices faded, then crept upstairs. The kitchen was empty, but I could hear Diana talking on the phone in another room. Yes, tonight. Transfer the patient to the Canadian facility immediately. No, there can't be any record of the move. Destroy all documentation. I had maybe 6 hours before they moved Sarah to someplace I might never find her. 6 hours to save my sister and get justice for everything the Morrison family had done. I pulled out my phone and called Detective Martinez. Rosa, it's an emergency. I need backup, and I need it now. But as I was talking, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find Daniel standing in the doorway, his face pale with shock. I heard everything, he whispered. My God, Maggie, what have they done to her? Daniel grabbed my arm, his eyes wild with panic and rage. They've had her locked away for 8 years? My own mother? Daniel, we need to stay calm, I whispered, glancing toward the hallway where Diana might return. If they suspect we know, calm. They've been drugging her, keeping her prisoner, and I've been living here like nothing happened. His voice cracked. All those times I wondered if she was dead, and she was just trapped. The sound of Diana's heels clicking on marble echoed from the foyer. Daniel straightened, schooling his features into a mask of casual indifference, a skill he'd clearly learned living with vipers. Mrs. Thompson? Everything all right? Diana appeared, her radar for family discord finely tuned. Just discussing tomorrow's schedule, Daniel replied smoothly. I need the library cleaned early. Business meeting at 10. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. Of course, Mrs. Thompson, you should retire early tonight, long day tomorrow. Translation. Stay in your room and mind your own business while we destroy evidence and relocate your sister. Yes, ma'am. Good night. I headed toward the staff quarters, my phone burning a hole in my pocket. Rosa was on her way, but even with police backup, we needed to know exactly where Sarah was being held before they moved her. In my small room above the garage, I paced like a caged animal. Every minute that passed was another minute closer to losing Sarah forever. I'd already lost her once to these people. I wouldn't let it happen again. A soft knock on my door made me freeze. Mrs. Thompson, it's Daniel. I opened the door to find him holding a manila folder. I went through Dad's office, found this hidden in his safe. The folder contained medical records from Pine Haven Private Treatment Facility, 2 hours north of Cleveland. Sarah Morrison, patient 14471, admitted 8 years ago for severe dissociative disorder and delusional thinking. Treatment included heavy sedation and isolation therapy. Isolation therapy, I muttered, my hands shaking with rage. They've been torturing her. There are financial records, too. Dad's been paying them $200,000 a year to keep her quiet. And Diana's been in charge of those payments since your father died. Daniel nodded grimly. She has power of attorney over all Dad's medical decisions. Legally, she can authorize Sarah's transfer anywhere she wants. Not if Sarah's competent to make her own decisions. After 8 years of drugs and isolation, Maggie, we don't know what state she's in. I stared at the medical records, noting the medications they'd been forcing on my sister. Antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, sedatives, enough chemicals to keep an elephant docile. We're getting her out tonight. How? Even if we reach the facility, Diana's already arranged the transfer. By the time we get there, Sarah could be on her way to Canada. Then we intercept the transport. Daniel stared at me. You're talking about kidnapping. I'm talking about rescuing my sister from people who've held her prisoner for 8 years. My phone buzzed. Rosa. Maggie, I made some calls. Pine Haven has a reputation for taking patients that families want to disappear. No questions asked. Minimal oversight. If your sister's there, getting her out legally could take months. We don't have months. They're moving her tonight. Then we do this carefully. I'm bringing 2 officers and an ambulance. If she needs medical attention after what they've done to her, Rosa, there's something else. Daniel Morrison wants to help. He's her son. A pause. Can we trust him? I looked at Daniel, who was studying the medical records with horror and determination warring on his face. Yes, we can trust him. Good. We'll need inside information about the facility's layout and security. After ending the call, Daniel and I spread out building plans he'd printed from the county records office. Pine Haven was built like a fortress. High walls, limited access points, electronic locks on everything. There, Daniel pointed to a service entrance. Staff parking is here. Deliveries come through this gate. Less security than the main entrance. You've thought about this before. I've been trying to figure out where they took her for 8 years. Never got close enough to be sure until now. Daniel, once we do this, there's no going back. Diana will know you're involved. Your inheritance, your life as you know it. My life has been built on a lie. My mother is alive, and she's been suffering while I lived in luxury bought with blood money. His jaw set determinedly. Let Diana have the money. I want my mother back. At midnight, we met Rosa and her team at a diner 5 miles from Pine Haven. The officers looked skeptical about our plan, but Rosa had apparently vouched for my sanity. Security changes shifts at 2 a.m., Daniel explained. That's our window. Skeleton crew for 30 minutes while they do handover. What about cameras? I can loop the feed from the security office. Dad invested in the facility years ago. I have administrative access to their systems. Rosa raised an eyebrow. Convenient. Dad liked to keep tabs on his investments, especially ones holding family secrets. The service entrance to Pine Haven looked like something from a horror movie. High concrete walls topped with razor wire, security cameras every 20 feet, and floodlights that could illuminate a football stadium. Cheerful place, I muttered, pulling on the scrubs Rosa had provided. Really screams healing environment. Daniel was already working on his laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. Security systems older than I expected. Good news for us. How's it good news that they're running a prison with outdated security? Easier to hack. And his screen filled with camera feeds. Got it. I can give us a 20-minute blind spot. Rosa checked her weapon for the 3rd time. Remember, we go in quiet. Find Sarah Thompson Morrison and get out. No heroics, no confrontations with staff unless absolutely necessary. What if she doesn't remember me? The question had been eating at me for hours. 8 years of drugs and isolation. What if she doesn't know who I am? Then we remind her, Daniel said quietly. Whatever it takes. At 2:15 a.m., we moved. The service entrance yielded to Rosa's lockpicks faster than I'd expected. Apparently, all those years married to a cop had taught her more than just how to make coffee and tolerate shift work. Inside, Pine Haven was worse than the outside suggested. Sterile white halls lit by harsh fluorescent bulbs. The smell of disinfectant couldn't quite cover underlying odors of human misery and pharmaceutical desperation. Patient rooms are on the 3rd floor, Daniel whispered, consulting the building plans on his phone. Sarah's in room 347. We climbed the stairs in silence, every footstep echoing like gunshots in my ears. At the 3rd floor landing, Rosa held up a hand. 2 nurses at the station. They look awake. Through the door's window, I could see them. One filing paperwork, the other reading a magazine. Both within sight of the elevator and main hallway. Fire stairs at the other end of the building, I suggested. Too far. We'd have to pass 6 other rooms, and some of these patients might not be as medicated as Sarah. Daniel was studying his phone again. There's a supply closet 15 feet down the hall. If I trigger a false alarm in the east wing, they'll investigate, leaving this area unguarded, Rosa finished. Do it. 30 seconds later, an ear-splitting shriek echoed from the far end of the building. Both nurses grabbed flashlights and hurried toward the sound, leaving their station unmanned. We moved quickly down the hallway, passing doors marked with numbers and names that represented someone's broken child, lost parent, or discarded family member. Room 343, 345, 347. The door was locked, but Rosa made quick work of it. Inside, my heart nearly stopped. A small figure lay on a narrow bed. So thin and pale I almost didn't recognize her. Sarah's beautiful dark hair had been shorn short, and her face was gaunt, aged beyond her actual 46 years. But it was her, my baby sister. Sarah? I whispered, approaching the bed slowly. Her eyes opened, unfocused and glazed from medication. She looked at me without recognition, then at Daniel, then back to me. "Time for pills?" she asked in a voice like broken glass. "No, sweetheart, no more pills." I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart breaking. "Sarah, it's me. It's Maggie." Something flickered in her eyes. "Maggie's dead. They told me Maggie died in a car accident." The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. They'd told her I was dead to prevent her from hoping, from trying to reach out. "I'm not dead, Sarah. I'm here. I found you. You're not real." She turned her face away. "Nothing's real anymore." Daniel stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Mom, it's Daniel, your son. We're here to take you home." Sarah's head turned back, studying Daniel's face with growing awareness. "Danny, my Danny." "Yes, Mom, it's me. But you're supposed to be at school. Diana said you were at boarding school and couldn't visit because I was too sick." Another lie. Another cruelty designed to isolate and break her spirit. "I'm not at school anymore. Mom, I grew up, and I've been looking for you." Sarah struggled to sit up, and I could see the toll 8 years had taken. Her hands shook constantly, a side effect of long-term antipsychotic use. Her movements were slow, uncertain. "This isn't real," she repeated, but with less conviction. They said everyone I remembered was dead or didn't want me anymore." "All lies," I said firmly. "Sarah, do you remember when we were kids? You used to have nightmares about the monster in your closet, and I'd sleep on your floor to protect you? Maggie would sing to me," she whispered. "Some song about mockingbirds." "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word," I began singing softly. "Maggie's gonna buy you a mockingbird." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Real recognition dawned in her face for the first time. "Maggie? My Maggie?" "Yes, baby girl. Your Maggie." The alarm down the hall suddenly stopped, and we heard voices approaching. "Time to go," Rosa said urgently. But as we helped Sarah stand, her legs buckled. 8 years of sedation and minimal movement had left her weak as a kitten. "Can you walk?" Daniel asked. I don't know." Footsteps echoed in the hallway, getting closer. "Wheelchair," Rosa said, grabbing one from the corner of the room. "Daniel, can you carry her?" As Daniel lifted his mother, Sarah looked at me with sudden panic. "Maggie, they'll hurt you if they find you here. Diana said terrible things would happen to anyone who tried to help me." "Let me worry about Diana," I said grimly. We'd made it halfway to the fire exit when the lights blazed on and a voice boomed through the intercom. "Security breach in Sector 7. All units respond immediately." The fire alarm doors slammed shut with an electronic click that meant business. "Well, that's not good," I observed, watching Daniel frantically swipe his access card against the reader. "Please tell me you have a plan B." "Working on it," he muttered, fingers flying over his phone. "The system's in lockdown mode. I need to find another way to—" Heavy footsteps thundered up the main stairwell. 3 security guards and what looked like an orderly were heading straight for us. Rosa drew her weapon. "Police! Stay where you are!" The guards hesitated, but the orderly, a massive man who probably bench-pressed patients for fun, kept coming. "You can't take her," he growled. "Dr. Hendricks's orders. She's dangerous to herself and others." "Dr. Hendricks can discuss that with my lawyers," Daniel snapped. "That's my mother, and she's leaving with us. Not without proper discharge paperwork." Sarah, who'd been silent in the wheelchair, suddenly spoke up. "Marcus?" She was looking at the orderly with something approaching recognition. "Marcus, you told me Danny was dead." The big man's face reddened. "Sarah, you're confused. The medications make you remember things wrong." "No," her voice was getting stronger. "You said my son died in a car accident when he was 16. You said that's why I had to stay here, because I had no family left." Marcus glanced nervously at the security guards. "She's delusional. Dr. Hendricks can explain." "Where is Dr. Hendricks?" Rosa demanded. "I want to speak to him immediately." "He's not available." "Then we're leaving." I grabbed the wheelchair handles. "Sarah is a voluntary patient. She has the right to discharge herself." "Actually," Marcus said with an ugly smile, "she doesn't. Sarah Morrison has been declared mentally incompetent. Her legal guardian has full authority over her medical decisions." "Her legal guardian?" "Diana Morrison. and she specifically authorized us to prevent any attempts to remove the patient. Daniel's face went pale. Diana had her declared incompetent? 3 years ago. Some nonsense about wanting to change her will, leave money to people who didn't exist. Dr. Hendricks testified that she was suffering from severe delusional thinking. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Diana hadn't just wanted Sarah silenced. She'd wanted her legally erased. With Sarah declared incompetent, Diana could control her medical care, her finances, even her life or death decisions. "You have 30 seconds to move," Rosa said, her weapon trained on Marcus. "Then I start arresting people for unlawful imprisonment." "You don't have jurisdiction here," one of the security guards said. "This is a private facility. I have jurisdiction wherever someone's being held against their will." The standoff stretched taut as wire. Then Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. "It's Diana." "Don't answer it," I said. But he was already swiping to accept. "Diana, what?" Diana's voice was loud enough for all of us to hear. "Daniel, darling, I know where you are, and I know what you're trying to do." "Then you know it's over. We found her, Diana. We know what Dad did, what you've been doing. What your father did was save a lost child and give her a beautiful life. What I've done is protect this family from scandal. You've tortured an innocent woman for 8 years. I've managed a family crisis. Sarah's fantasy about being kidnapped would have destroyed your father's reputation, your inheritance, everything we've built." Sarah was listening to this conversation with growing agitation. "She's lying," she whispered to me. "I wasn't fantasizing. I remember now. I remember everything." Diana's voice continued, cold and calculating. "Daniel, you can still walk away from this. Come home and we'll say nothing about your misguided rescue attempt." "What about Sarah?" "Sarah will be transferred to a secure facility where she can receive proper treatment. She'll be comfortable, well cared for, and unable to hurt anyone with her delusions." "You mean unable to tell the truth?" "The truth is, whatever we decide it is, darling. That's what having money and power means." I'd heard enough. I grabbed the phone from Daniel. "Diana, this is Maggie, Sarah's sister. You know, the one who's very much alive and very pissed off." A pause. Then, "Mrs. Thompson, I was hoping we could avoid unpleasantness." "Lady, you haven't seen unpleasantness yet, but you will. I think you're forgetting something. You're trespassing in a private medical facility. You're attempting to kidnap a patient. And you're interfering with legal guardianship arrangements. And you're going to prison for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit murder." Diana laughed. "Prove it. It's your word against mine, and I have 8 years of medical records showing Sarah's mental instability." "Actually," Daniel said, taking his phone back, "you don't." I could hear the smile in his voice, and suddenly I realized what he'd been doing on his phone while we argued with the guards. "What do you mean?" Diana's voice had lost some of its confidence. "I mean, I've been recording everything. This conversation, the conversation in the kitchen tonight. Everything. And I've been uploading it to multiple cloud servers in real time." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Oh," Daniel continued cheerfully, "and I sent copies to my lawyer, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and Channel 5 News. Funny thing about being a billionaire. The media takes your calls even at 3 a.m. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. The story should be breaking on the morning news. Billionaire's wife held captive for 8 years. It has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Marcus and the security guards were looking at each other uncertainly. Whatever Diana was paying them, it probably didn't include dealing with national media attention and murder charges. "Diana," Daniel said quietly, "it's over. The police are here. The media will be here soon, and everyone's going to know what you did. Daniel," Diana's voice was pleading now, "think about what you're doing. The scandal will destroy everything your father worked for." "Good. Maybe it's time the Morrison name meant something other than money and corruption." He ended the call and looked at the guards. "Gentlemen, I strongly suggest you step aside. In about 10 minutes, this place is going to be crawling with reporters and FBI agents." "FBI?" Marcus squeaked. "Kidnapping across state lines is a federal crime," Rosa explained helpfully. "So is conspiracy to commit murder. So is holding someone against their will for financial gain." The guards looked at each other, then at Marcus, then at us. Slowly, they stepped aside. "Smart choice," I said, pushing Sarah's wheelchair toward the now unlocked fire exit. But as we reached the door, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Maggie," she whispered, "there's something I need to tell you. About what really happened the day I disappeared. About who else was involved." "What do you mean, who else was involved?" I asked as we made our way down the fire stairs. Sarah's hands were shaking badly, but her eyes were clearer than they'd been since we found her. "James didn't work alone. He couldn't have. Someone had to tell him about our family, about where we lived, when our parents would be distracted." Rosa stopped on the landing. "Sarah, take your time. Tell us what you remember. That day, when I was hiding in the backyard," Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Someone called Mom into the house, said there was an emergency phone call. About Grandma being sick. My blood turned to ice. But Grandma died 2 years before that." "I know, but Mom didn't question it. She told me to stay put, that she'd be right back, and then—" Sarah closed her eyes. "A man came to the fence. He knew my name. He said Maggie was hurt, that she was in a car at the hospital and was asking for me." Daniel was listening intently. "My father?" "No. This man was younger, dark hair. He said he was a friend of the family, that Maggie was crying for me and we had to hurry." "And you went with him?" "I was 8 years old and scared my sister was dying. Of course I went with him." Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I kept asking where you were. He kept promising I'd see you soon." "Who made the phone call to Mom?" Rosa asked. "The one about Grandma being sick?" That's what I figured out years later, when I started remembering. The voice on the phone was a woman. Mom mentioned it to Dad later, said something about how the woman knew details about Grandma's medical history that only family would know. "Someone who knew our family well enough to trick Mom?" Sarah nodded. "Someone who knew when Dad would be at work, when you'd be at soccer practice, when Mom would be home alone with just me." "Someone local," I said grimly. "More than that. Someone Mom trusted enough to leave me unattended based on their word." We'd reached the ground floor. Rosa cautiously opened the door to the parking lot. "All clear." "Sarah," I said as we moved toward our cars, "do you remember anything else about this woman? Did Mom ever mention who called?" "She said—" Sarah frowned, concentrating. "She said it was strange because the woman had called her Margaret instead of Mom, but knew so much about the family." "Margaret. Only a few people outside immediate family called our mother by her full name. Teachers, doctors, and—" "Church members," I breathed. "What?" "Mom was very active in church. The women's auxiliary, the planning committee. They all called each other by their formal names." Rosa was already taking notes. "So we're looking for a woman connected to your family's church, someone who knew your routines, your family history, and had enough influence to convince a mother to leave her child unattended." "But why?" Daniel asked. "Why would someone from your church help kidnap Sarah?" "Money," Sarah said simply. "James paid them. He had to have. This wasn't random. It was planned, coordinated, professional. How much would someone take to help kidnap a child?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "You'd be surprised what people will do for money, especially people who think they'll never get caught." As we reached our cars, Rosa's radio crackled to life. "Martinez, what's your status?" "Package secured and en route. Situation under control." "Copy that. Be advised, we have federal agents requesting updates on the Morrison case. Looks like this is going bigger than expected." Sarah looked at Daniel with concern. "Are you ready for this? Once this story breaks, your life is going to change completely." "It already has," Daniel said. 8 years too late, but it has. The Morrison family will come after you with everything they have. Lawyers, private investigators, character assassination. They'll say you're mentally unstable, that you're being manipulated. Let them try. I have resources too, and I have something they don't. What's that? The truth. As we drove away from Pine Haven, I watched the building shrink in my mirrors and tried to process everything that had happened. 42 years after losing my sister, I'd found her. But finding her and saving her were two different things. "Maggie!" Sarah's voice was small from the back seat. "What if I can't get better? What if 8 years of drugs and isolation have damaged me permanently?" I reached back and took her hand. "Then we'll deal with that together. But Sarah, you're stronger than they think. You survived 8 years of hell and still remembered who you were." "Still remembered me. That's not damage. That's proof of how strong you really are. I want to go home." "Where's home for you?" She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anymore. The house I grew up in with James is full of lies. The house we lived in as children is gone. I don't know where I belong. You belong wherever you're loved, Daniel said from the front seat. And you're loved by me and by Maggie. Everything else we can figure out. My phone rang. Rosa. Maggie, we have a problem. Pine Haven is claiming Sarah was taken against her will by armed intruders. They're filing kidnapping charges against all of us. On whose authority? Diana Morrison's. She's claiming we've kidnapped a mentally incompetent woman and interfered with her medical treatment. What about the recordings Daniel made? They'll help. But Diana's lawyers are arguing that Sarah was coerced into those statements while under emotional duress. I looked at Sarah in the rearview mirror. After everything she'd been through, she was about to be dragged through a legal nightmare that could last years. Rosa, what do we need to prove Sarah's competence? Independent psychiatric evaluation, evidence that she's been held against her will, and proof that Diana's guardianship was obtained fraudulently. How long will that take? Months, maybe years. We don't have months. Diana will have Sarah back in an institution within days. Then we need to find proof of the original conspiracy. The woman who made the phone call, evidence of payment, something that shows this was a planned kidnapping from the beginning. I thought about what Sarah had remembered, a woman from our church, someone who knew our family well enough to manipulate Mom. Sarah, what was the name of our church? The one Mom was so active in? St. Matthew's Lutheran. Why? Because, I said, making a U-turn, we're about to pay some very old friends a visit. St. Matthew's Lutheran Church looked exactly the same as it had 43 years ago when our family attended every Sunday. Same red brick, same white steeple, same narrow parking lot where Dad always struggled to fit our old station wagon. The church secretary's office is in the basement, I told Rosa as we approached the building. If they kept records from the 1980s, that's where they'd be. Sarah was walking under her own power now, though she still moved slowly. The fresh air and absence of institutional fluorescent lighting had already improved her color dramatically. Maggie, what exactly are we looking for? Daniel asked. Church financial records from 1983. If someone was paid to help with Sarah's kidnapping, there might be a record of unusual deposits or expenditures around that time. Rosa raised an eyebrow. You think they'd record payment for kidnapping in the church books? I think whoever did this wasn't a criminal mastermind. They were probably a normal person who got in over their head and made mistakes. The basement office was unlocked. Small-town churches rarely worried about security in 1980s Ohio, and apparently that hadn't changed much. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, labeled by year and department. Women's Auxiliary, 1983, Sarah read from a faded label. That's where Mom would have met most of her church friends. I pulled out the drawer and started flipping through folders. Meeting minutes, fundraising records, volunteer schedules. And there, in a folder marked Special Projects, something that made my hands shake. Rosa, look at this. It was a handwritten note dated July 10th, 1983, 5 days before Sarah disappeared. Emergency Family Assistance Fund activated. $5,000 dispensed to aid the Morrison family crisis. Arranged by E. Patterson, approved by Pastor Williams, posthumously authorized. E. Patterson, Rosa read aloud. Who's E. Patterson? Eleanor Patterson, Sarah said quietly. She was Mom's best friend in the church. They worked together on every committee, every fundraiser. $5,000 in 1983, I said, my voice shaking with rage. That's almost $20,000 in today's money. Eleanor sold my sister for $20,000. Where's Eleanor Patterson now? Rosa asked. Dead, Sarah said. She died about 10 years ago, but... She paused. Her daughter Linda still lives in town. She teaches at the elementary school. The same Linda Patterson I went to high school with? I asked. The same one. And Maggie. There's something else. Linda was always weird about money, even as a kid. Remember how she always had expensive clothes, new toys, things her family shouldn't have been able to afford? You think Eleanor shared the money with her family? I think Eleanor used the money to secure her daughter's future. College fund, house down payment, whatever Linda needed. Rosa was already on her phone. I need an address for Linda Patterson, current residence in Cleveland area. 20 minutes later, we stood outside a modest ranch house in a middle-class neighborhood. Linda Patterson's white Honda Civic sat in the driveway next to a small garden that would have made our mother proud. "How do we play this?" Daniel asked. "Carefully," Rosa said. "If Linda was complicit in the original kidnapping, confronting her could be dangerous." "She was 12 years old," I protested. "How complicit could she have been? Old enough to remember, old enough to keep secrets for 40 years. I rang the doorbell. Footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal a woman I barely recognized. Linda Patterson had aged into a tired-looking middle school teacher with gray-streaked hair and suspicious eyes. "Margaret Thompson?" she said uncertainly. "My God, I haven't seen you since high school graduation." "Hello, Linda. This is my sister Sarah." Linda's face went white as she looked at Sarah. That's impossible. Sarah died years ago." "No, Linda. Sarah was taken, and I think you know exactly how and why." Linda's hand moved toward the door, but Rosa stepped forward, showing her badge. "Ms. Patterson, I'm Detective Martinez. We'd like to ask you some questions about events in 1983. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We found the church records." "Linda," I said quietly, "the emergency fund, your mother's signature on the authorization." Linda's composure cracked completely. She told me it was to help a family in crisis, that someone needed money for medical bills. "And you believed her?" "I was 12 years old. When my mother said we were helping people, I believed her." "But you figured it out eventually," Sarah said, speaking for the first time. "When did you realize what really happened?" Linda looked at Sarah with tears in her eyes. "When I was in college. Mom had too much to drink one Christmas and started rambling about mistakes she'd made, children she'd hurt. She said she'd been promised that no one would get hurt, that you were going to a loving family." "A loving family," I repeated bitterly. "Is that what she called kidnappers?" "She said James Morrison was wealthy, that he could give you opportunities your real family never could. She convinced herself she was doing a good deed. For $5,000. Linda nodded miserably. "Mom used the money to send me to private school, to pay for college. Everything I have, everything I've accomplished, is built on blood money." Rosa stepped forward. "Linda, we need you to testify to what your mother told you. Sarah's being held against her will based on false claims about her mental state. If I testify, it'll destroy my career, my reputation. And for what? It won't bring back the years Sarah lost. It'll give her back her freedom," I said fiercely. "And it'll make sure the people responsible face justice. The people responsible are dead. My mother, James Morrison, they're all dead. Diana Morrison isn't dead," Daniel said quietly, "and she's been continuing her father's crimes for 8 years. Linda looked between us, clearly struggling with her conscience. "If I testify, you have to understand. I was a child. I didn't know what was really happening." "We understand," Sarah said gently. "Linda, I don't blame you for what your mother did, but I need your help to make sure it never happens to anyone else." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, I'll testify, but I want immunity from prosecution." "Done," Rosa said immediately. As we walked back to our cars, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Maggie, is it really over?" "Almost," I said. "We still have to deal with Diana's legal challenges, the media circus, all of that. But the truth is out now. Diana can't hide behind lies anymore. What happens to Daniel, to his inheritance?" I looked at Daniel, who was talking quietly with Rosa about next steps. "I think Daniel's going to be just fine. He's got something worth more than money, integrity. And what about us? What happens to our family now?" I squeezed her hand. "Now we get to find out who we are when we're not victims or survivors. We get to just be sisters again." My phone rang. It was Detective Martinez. "Maggie, turn on Channel 5. The story's breaking now." I found a news app on my phone and clicked on the live stream. A perfectly coiffed anchor was speaking directly into the camera. "Good morning. I'm reporting on a breaking story out of Cleveland involving allegations of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and a decades-long conspiracy involving one of Ohio's wealthiest families." As the reporter continued, detailing the evidence we'd uncovered and Linda's forthcoming testimony, I realized this was really happening. After 42 years, the truth was finally coming out. "And in related news," the anchor continued, "Diana Morrison was arrested early this morning on charges of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. She's being held without bail pending a federal investigation into the Morrison family's business practices. Sarah started crying. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. It's really over, she whispered. Yes, I said, putting my arms around her. It's really over, and we're really free. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our new house, a modest place we'd bought together with money from the settlement Daniel had insisted we accept. Sarah was making coffee, her hands steady now that she'd been off the psychiatric medications for months. Maggie, she said, do you think we'll ever be normal? I laughed. Sarah, we were never normal. We're sisters who found each other across 42 years, time zones, and more trauma than most people see in a lifetime. Normal is overrated. What's not overrated? Family, I said simply. Love. The truth. Those things are priceless. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her since we were children. Maggie? Yeah? Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for staying alive long enough for me to find you. Outside, Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. He came for dinner every Sunday now, a tradition we'd started to rebuild the family bonds that lies and money had nearly destroyed. Aunt Maggie, he called out as he came through the door. Mom, something amazing happened today. What's that? Sarah asked, hugging her son. The Morrison Foundation's first shelter for missing children opened this morning. 40 beds, fully staffed, state-of-the-art facilities. His smile was radiant. It's called Sarah's House. I felt tears prick my eyes. From hardware store owner to kidnapping victim to billionaire's aunt to survivor, my life had taken turns I never could have imagined. But sitting in this kitchen with my sister and nephew, all of us free and safe and together, I realized something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well. And we were finally, truly living. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.